Folks, the presidential tickets are more than just Hillary Clinton and Tim Kaine versus Donald Trump and Mike Pence. Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump have been flying high in the sky as far as issues going back and forth, both political and personal. Whereas we really, or at least I haven't, really been paying a lot of attention to their running mates. Tim Kaine out of Virginia, Mike Pence out of Indiana. Tim Kaine, senator out of Virginia, has a long career in Congress. But a lot of people don't know that Mike Pence had a pretty decent career in Congress as far as length of service in Congress and things that he wanted to do, and has a, shall we call it, less than stellar career as the governor of Indiana. If Mike Pence hadn't been tapped to be vice president of the United States, he would have been in the fight of his life in order to be reelected as governor, and more than likely he would have lost. But I think it's important that we know exactly who this guy is. This clip from the Joy Reid show is going to give you a fairly decent, and I'm not going to say it's evenly balanced because I don't know that it is, but I believe it's a fairly decent picture of who Mike Pence really is. And to be honest with you, this guy scares me almost as much as Donald Trump as far as the potential that he has to do damage to this country. Here we go with the segment.
Frankly, hold Dick Cheney in very high regard in his role as vice president and as American.
That's the kind of vice president you'd want to be?
Well, I think it's a very active vice president.
Donald Trump's running mate, Indiana Governor Mike Pence, wants to emulate the most powerful, some might say the most frightening, vice president of all time. And that is why you should be watching the one and only vice presidential debate this Tuesday. Because who Mike Pence is might very well determine what kind of president Donald Trump would be. And joining me now, comedian and Sirius XM host John Fugelsang, whose sexy liberal comedy hour kept me up extremely late last night, Liz Winstead, co-creator of Lady Parts Justice, and Jonathan and Michelle are back with us. All right, let's talk about Mike Pence. And Liz, I'm going to come to you first on this because you sort of have a Mike Pence story.
Yeah, I mean, my complete activism and the reason that I started Lady Parts Justice was when I was sitting in my pajamas watching Mike Pence when that whole Tea Party Congress took over, and the first thing they did after we had a financial crisis, we were on the brink of ruin, the first thing he did in HR 1 was to defund Planned Parenthood. And I was like, what's happening? That's insane. It didn't happen, but it was from that moment on when he was in Congress that we saw 27 pieces of legislation known as trap laws go into all these different state legislatures, and that is when this assault really started happening. So, and then he got to be governor, and then it became crazy. He proposed that women should have 2 transvaginal ultrasounds, and then it from there.
And just really quickly, what are trap laws?
Trap laws are targeted regulation of abortion providers. They are laws designed to close down clinics, not to help women get access to health care.
Yeah.
And so that's what they do.
And you know, John, you've got Pence, who is the author of the Pence Amendment. People forget that he was, in Congress. From 2011, U.S. House votes down Pence amendment intended to defund Planned Parenthood. He's the guy who's behind that. You go to the next thing, conversion therapy. This is a PolitiFact headline that it is true. Mike Pence advocated for conversion therapy for people who are gay, saying that he could, put them off to a camp somewhere, I suppose, and change their orientation. He is extremely socially conservative.
Extremely thus, and he bases it on a Christianity that bears no resemblance to the actual teachings of Jesus in the Gospels. Look no further than the religious freedom laws he signed in Indiana, essentially making discrimination legal 50 years after the civil rights movement, saying, no, you can tell some people they can't be served at your lunch counter. The religious freedom law, in his case, meant the freedom to believe Christ hates the same people as you. Homophobia is incompatible with the teachings of the New Testament. So I wouldn't mind him being Christian if he were actually Christian in his policies. Keep in mind also, this is a man who said cigarettes do not cause cancer, and these issues have not been raised yet because his nominee sucks all the air out of the room.
And if I could add one more thing to that, while Mike Pence was doing that RIFRA thing, he failed in Congress to defund Planned Parenthood, but he defunded the Planned Parenthood in Indiana. And while that RIFRA thing was happening, a little known thing that did happen was that there was a county in Indiana that suffered 87 cases of an HIV outbreak, and the reason that it did was because those Planned Parenthoods closed and there was nobody to diagnose or treat them, and they had to open up pop-up clinics to treat them.
And Jonathan, I want to come to you on this because one of the reasons that it matters, normally the vice president doesn't really make a whole lot of difference, but Mike Pence was put on the ticket to...
Let me stop it right there. When Mike Pence was successful in closing down the Planned Parenthood centers, and they only had one in this particular county, and as soon as he got that center closed down, there was an epidemic of HIV cases, and I do mean epidemic. It got as high as 180 HIV cases in the county, and they were still counting. Planned Parenthood centers don't just deal with reproductive services, okay? They deal with a lot of other things, such as testing for diseases and conditions, of which AIDS and HIV is one of them. Because that center closed down, there was no testing, okay, so that people would become aware of their situation. Now, HIV/AIDS always seemed to have the label of being either a gay disease or a black disease, which couldn't be further from the truth. This particular county in Indiana was like 95% white. And their problem was that there was a huge, and I do mean huge, issue with intravenous drug usage. Because the economic condition of that particular county declined, more and more people were going to intravenous drugs. And because they didn't have the money for clean needles, they started sharing needles. And that's how the HIV/AIDS epidemic blew up, because of the sharing of needles. Now, they figured out that they had a problem. I don't know how they could not know that they didn't have a problem, but anyway, they saw that they had a problem, and where did they go for help? They went to the state of New York, because New York is always a leader in pretty much fixing social issues there and then in California. Well, New York had a needle exchange program where you could go in and take your used needles, exchange them for brand new clean needles, and also get help, counseling, etc., for the problem. Well, Indiana had a law that prohibited free needle exchange programs. Why was that? That's because Mike Pence got in there with his Republican legislature and passed that law. So now you had a law on the books that prevented free needle exchange, which was a proven deterrent on the spread of HIV/AIDS. That was 2013. Mr. Pence didn't finally wake up and see the light, okay, until last year, 2015, where because of the CDC, okay, the disease control national arm, declaring that they had an epidemic on their hands, that Mr. Pence finally declared a state emergency regarding the HIV outbreak and suspended that particular law, which in turn allowed people to come in, set up the needle exchange program to try to start tamping down the spread of HIV. Also, once those programs were set up, people started getting tested, and I didn't know this, but there are all kinds of drugs out there that can reduce the viral load of the HIV virus, which helps to slow down, if not stop, the transmission of the virus, both sexually and through intravenous needle sharing. But that's just one of the things that Mike Pence was an advocate for. So Mr. Mike Pence helped to promote an AIDS HIV epidemic in his own state because of his quote-unquote conservative Christian views. All right, yeah, I rambled on a bit. Here's let's continue with this particular clip.
Calm, jittery Republicans who were thinking that Donald Trump was a bridge too far for them. And you have Donald Trump Jr. having been leaked that he, in trying to recruit John Kasich, the governor of Ohio, to take this job, said to him, oh no, you'll be the most powerful vice president. You're going to run the country. Donald Trump will be touring around the country making America great again. So this is a guy who would have actual power.
Right. He, I think, could possibly be Dick Cheney on steroids, if you can possibly imagine that. And this Governor Pence is super conservative, and Liz and John did a great job of sort of explaining just how far that conservatism goes. You know, when Mike Pence was chosen, it was seen at the time by political folks as a base pick. Someone, I think you just mentioned, someone who would calm the Republican Party base and make it clear to everyone that there is someone conservative who would have his hand on the controls. But I think as John just said, because Donald Trump is dominating everything about the ticket, that no one has been able to focus on the fact that if indeed Trump becomes president, that the vice president is going to be extremely powerful, and this extremely powerful person is extremely conservative. And I think a lot of those people who Trump would Trump would need in order to become president will scare them off.
Yeah, and Michelle, really quickly, just looking at his ratings across the board, he's got an A rating from the National Rifle Association, 100% from National Right to Life. American Civil Liberties Union, not so much, 0%. NAACP, 5%. I don't know what he did to get 5. Human Rights Campaign, 0%. So this is somebody who, if you are gay, if you are African American, you really have to think this guy might not actually be your guy.
You have to be looking and saying he is definitely not my cup of tea. It's extraordinary, Joy, because in any other election, one would like to think that Mike Pence's political philosophies would immediately disqualify him from ever being vice president or president of the United States. So what does it say to the others as I refer to people like you and me, to people who are women, people who are of color, people who are ethnic and religious minorities, that the man who is allegedly the there to calm Donald Trump down and calm the waters, believes that it is appropriate for people to use religion as a basis to discriminate against, gays, the gay and lesbian community or the African American community, or to a man who literally wanted to pass legislation to stop Syrian refugees from being resettled in Indiana, to closing down Planned Parenthood. I mean, he is someone who does not believe in civil liberties for anyone unless they appear to be a white male. It's a very scary notion.
And John, I have been fascinated by this notion that white evangelical Christians, we shouldn't lump all evangelicals together, because there are black evangelicals who are not down with this.
There's lots of nice white evangelicals.
There are a lot of nice evangelicals. There are liberal evangelical Christians, but this notion of being able to say that you are evangelical Christian, you believe in the you're a Bible believing Christian, but that somebody who is not only thrice married, but also quite vulgar, right? And then you also have Mike Pence with him, whose ideas can envelop torture.
Of course.
And right to life.
Well, and also to boast of Christianity while telling fleeing Middle Eastern immigrants there's no room at the Indiana, all right? Am I right? And I think that it's a very good point to remember that half of Mike Pence's top donors have bailed on him for re-election. His job's in trouble. He's the highest-ranking Republican who would say yes to Donald Trump. Condoleezza Rice wouldn't take his call, and as you so astutely pointed out, the biggest story here to me is that they made the offer to Kasich and more or less said, you'll be the chief executive. Trump is only planning on being a ceremonial ruler. So when you vote for Trump, you're actually voting for this guy to run the White House.
He's supposed to be prime minister, right? I mean, that's what they're talking about.
I think, just spitballing here, maybe we need Trump conversion therapy. I don't know. I think if we could get the religious communities together, I think that maybe this might not be a horrible idea.
I picture, and you're not supposed to preach from the pulpit, but we all know if you're in a church that's very politically active, there is a very strong message that is sent, and it was sent during the Bush era. You better be with Bush if you're a Christian.
Yeah.
I wonder how, when you just this past week, listening to the things that Donald Trump has just said about women, and then you look at Mike Pence and this sort of deep intolerance, this sort of deep vein of intolerance that runs through Mike Pence. How does that sermon go down?
Well, we're warned throughout the New Testament about false prophets, right? And the problem we have in this country, I have no problem with a government based on Christian values. I'd love to see that if it's actually the values of Christ laid out in Matthew 25. You want to follow me? You take care of the poor, you take care of the sick, you're kind to those in prison. The problem with American Christianity today, and the reason why it's becoming an atheist factory, is because it's all about worshiping Jesus as a god and ignoring his inconveniently liberal teachings of social justice. Mike Pence is Exhibit A.
Yeah, turning over those money changers. He wasn't saying, the Pharisees are the good guys.
The one time
Trump is a false prophet who claims false prophets in his text.
The one time Christ got angry was because people were exploiting the poor.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Book of Matthew Christians, I think, are rejoicing all over America, and we're keeping them out of church, so apologies for that. All right, my guests will be back.
All right, so that's just a little about Mike Pence. I suggest you do what I'm going to do, which I'm going to go dig into this guy's record a whole lot deeper than I have, and I am going to watch that debate on Tuesday night just to see how it goes down. But Mike Pence is dangerous, and all you need to know is when he tried to pass that religious liberty law, got it passed, and there was a tremendous backlash to the point that he had to back down and repeal a law that he was pushing. Stay tuned. There's probably going to be more to Mike Pence than we currently know.